President's question time. The Honorable Member for East-Teji.
Mr. Speaker, Your Honor, the Vice President, it is in public domain that your government is putting up a national command center like that of President Museveni in Uganda. You are installing 1,000 cameras throughout the nation. You've brought into the country high-tech weapons, probably to be used against your own citizens. And my question is, why has this project become a priority to the government when you have other projects which are not completed, such as Inonge Wina Road and many other infrastructure projects in the country? Why has this project become a priority to the government? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I honor the Vice President.
Mr. Speaker, public security and safety are on high priority, not only of this government, but governments world over. And the public has to be protected at all times, not only at the time of elections. And many governments have put in place measures to secure public safety using the latest technology that will bring out information where a human eye sometimes cannot. So it's not anything new. This particular project was started many years ago, 5 years ago, if I may recollect. And this is not designed for elections. This will be a public feature that will capture data on matters of security. And Mr. Speaker, Zambians should welcome such moves because their government is moving in the technological era that most governments are already in. There are issues of smart cities in this world, and the smart cities are anchored on various development issues, including surveillance. And this is what your government is doing. The honorable member for Inonge should be pleased that his government is moving in the technological era. I thank you, sir.
Honorable Member for Lumezi. Honorable Member for Lumezi. Not available. Honorable Member for Luampa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Am I audible, Mr. Speaker?
Yes, and you may proceed.
Thank you. Your Honor, the Vice President, I want to find out from your government, since we have been told that the Public Order Act should be amended soon or before the 12th August general election. Now, in its current form, where it has been abusively used, especially on opposition parties, what other mechanism you are going to put in place so that the playing field is fair for everyone who is going to participate in this election without any intimidation from your PF government.
I honor the Vice President.
Mr. Speaker, this issue was debated intensively yesterday in the House, and the Minister of Justice explained all the details pertaining to the Public Order Act and why it could not pass. And the honorable member should have known that by refusing to get this amendment done to the Public Order Act, he was putting himself and the others to some sort of challenges. The Public Order Act is applicable to all, not only to punish. It's not intended to punish the opposition political parties. It's for everyone, particularly for those that abrogate the law of the land. There you'll find that the Public Order Act does not favor you. So long as you are a law-abiding citizen of Zambia, in whatever circumstances, the law will protect you. And the Public Order Act is one of those laws that should protect citizens without any bias or discrimination in its application. So we believe that during the coming elections, and even before elections, this law will be applied fairly on all the political players. And this government is determined to ensure that the law is applied in its real original status. So the honorable member should not fear that the Public Order Act will not be used, rather will be used against the opposition parties. That is far from it. The government does not want to see any discrimination in the application of the law on its citizens. I thank you.
Honorable Member for Chavuma.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, animals in the Republic of Zambia, Chavuma, West Bank, East Bank inclusive, are dying from CDPP. The Ministry of Livestock doesn't have the vaccine to distribute to farmers across the country because there is no vaccine in the Republic of Zambia. I, as a representative of the people, visited the Ministry of Livestock to see if by any chance there are any little vaccines which can be sent to my people in Chavuma because of a lot of animals which are dying nearly every day. There was no vaccine. My question to you, I honor the Vice President, is government considering allocating funds to the Ministry of Livestock so that it can purchase vaccines for animals who are dying across the country due to the lack of the vaccines? Is the government allocating funds? Mr. Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity.
I honor the Vice President.
Mr. Speaker, this government is committed to diversifying the agricultural sector. And the livestock subsector is one of those growth areas that government is focusing on. And the outbreak of contagious diseases such as CBPP and foot and mouth disease, are a concern to this government. And as a result, the Ministry of Livestock and Fisheries is soliciting for funding, and the Treasury is mobilizing resources to ensure that the ministry buys enough vaccines to treat the animals countrywide, especially in the areas where the disease has the disease has spread, such as Chavuma and the Zambezi West Bank. Mr. Speaker, I thank you.
Honorable members have also received indications to ask questions on the Zoom platform from honorable members for Zambezi West, Sioma, Solwezi Central, and Mukushi North. So I'll be alternating between the e-chamber as well as the Zoom platform. Honorable member for Mongu Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Honor, the Vice President, in every ward I have visited in Mongu Central, I have found many citizens complaining that they were not registered as voters. As a result of this, I took time to analyze the voter registration for 2021. And in my analysis, I found that Copperbelt has gone down by just under 15,000 voters. Central Province has gone down by about 43,000 voters. Western Province has gone down by about 36,000 voters. Your Honor, the Vice President, the right to vote is a civil and political right that belongs to a class of rights that protect individuals from infringement by the government. Indeed, infringement and encroachment. Given that these three provinces, their numbers have gone down, I describe this as a disaster. Will you not consider to at least register voters and bring them to the numbers they were previously, if you are not willing to increase them as we see the increase in other provinces? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honor the Vice President.
Mr. Speaker, this question will be responded to when the Vice President responds to a question on the order paper that will come this morning. I thank you, sir.
The Honorable Member for Manyinga.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The coronavirus has no boundaries to human beings. I've now seen people are dying even in my constituents almost every day. Now, Your Honor, the Vice President, it has been 3 weeks since the government of this country, Zambia, allowed our children to go back to school. Now, Your Honor, the people of this country are asking if this COVID-19 hasn't attacked any of the schools in this country, and if the government, there's any progress made in terms of protecting our children who are in schools. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity.
I honor the Vice President.
Mr. Speaker, this country has 4 million school-going children. And out of that number, some of the children are already attending schools, and they have been doing so for the past 3 weeks or somewhere there. However, we have not yet received any information pertaining to the death of any of the pupils. And where there has been some infection that affected a certain school or a certain classroom, measures have been taken to ensure that the health measures are followed, starting with the school premises, the environment, the teachers, the protection of the pupils themselves. So far, we should be pleased that our children have not been affected negatively by COVID. And I hope that this situation continues. And government will continue to provide the necessary requisites to ensure that the school premises are kept clean and safe for our children. I thank you, sir.
Honorable Member for Inonge.
Most grateful, Mr. Speaker. In the spirit and indeed policy of not leaving anyone behind by this able government, the people of Inonge were left out on the financing project for social cash transfer in the province. I think there are about 2 or so districts that were left out. Your Honor, may I know when our district will benefit on this project? I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honor the Vice President.
Mr. Speaker, indeed, this government of Dr. Edgar Chagwalungu will never leave anyone behind, especially those that are most vulnerable in our communities. And the Ministry of Community Development and Social Welfare is going through all the districts to ascertain the number of the vulnerable people in those communities. And I believe that if the district that the honorable member refers to was overlooked, the officers will be there to capture the vulnerable members of society that need to be put on the social cash transfer. Because, Mr. Speaker, this is one of the social protection measures that will help the people, especially in rural areas and the most vulnerable in our urban centers, to alleviate poverty and to ensure that these Zambians can also benefit from the COVID funds and the other empowerment programs that government is rolling out. I thank you, sir.
Honorable Member for Zambezi West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Honor, the Vice President, life in Zambia has become so hard for the Zambian people to bear. The cost of living is so high that people can no longer afford 3 meals per day. What is your government doing, or rather what drastic measures have you put in place to mitigate the high cost of living in this country? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honor the Vice President.
Mr. Speaker, it's true that the cost of living has gone up, and that the government of the Republic of Zambia has put in some measures to ensure that inflation in its current form does not impact the lives of our people. And I wish to start, Mr. Speaker, by stating that government recognizes the importance of maintaining inflation within sustainable levels to make the cost of living affordable for our people. And we will notice, Mr. Speaker, that since 2011, inflation has generally been within the target range of 6 to 8%. Food prices are a major component of the measurement of inflation. And during the periods 2015, 2016, and 2017, 2018, the rate was higher than targeted, mainly due to increased food prices caused by low agricultural output that the country experienced on account of poor rainfall during these farming seasons. Mr. Speaker, to counter inflationary pressures and stabilize the cost of living, government has implemented several measures, which include, among others, the removal of VAT and excise duty on petroleum products to reduce fuel-related inflationary pressures. Government has put restrictions of maize exports to make it more available on the domestic market. Government has increased support to farmers to grow crops or to diversify their agricultural activities, such as growing soybeans, so that the price of cooking oil can become stable. Government has taken measures to stabilize the kwacha against major currencies. And these measures include the building of reserves through the purchasing of gold. Mr. Speaker, I wish to emphasize that the government is fully aware of the challenges caused by high inflation and has taken measures and will continue to take measures, including increasing social cash payments for the vulnerable households in order to cushion the impact of rising prices. Mr. Speaker, I thank you.
Honorable Member for Kalomo Central.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Your Honor, the Vice President, for all the people who are going to campaign to go to prisons, they need a bill that will clarify what is supposed to happen there, how they are going to campaign, and how everything of the prisoners voting will go. My question, Your Honor, the Vice President, is when is the bill that will support the voting of prisoners coming to Parliament so that things are very clear for people who will participate in the 2021 elections, August? Thank you.
Honor the Vice President.
The voting by Zambians who are under incarceration is a new phenomenon in our country. And there are many processes that have to be undertaken in order to ensure that this segment of our community is engaged in the democratic dispensation, including voting for their members of parliament. So the process is still ongoing, and the country will be informed, as well as the members of parliament and the political parties will be informed when it will be convenient or necessary for the stakeholders to engage the prisoners In the meanwhile, the bill is being worked on, and it will be brought to Parliament during this sitting of Parliament. I thank you, sir.
Honorable Member for Sioma.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and it's good to see you, Your Honor, the Vice President. Happy New Year. Your Honor, the Vice President, the river Zambezi is full because of the heavy rains that we've received this year, putting the lives of our pupils that cross, our pupils, our mothers that cross the river to access either the health facilities or schools across the other dry land. My question to you is, what urgent measures have you put in place as a government to ensure that banana boats are procured for the areas of Livonda, Likuyu, Sitoti, Kalongola, Sroana, Kondwama, and Mwamba? I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Her Honor, the Vice President.
Mr. Speaker, yes, the rainfall season sometimes comes with its own challenges. And the most disadvantaged people in our community are school children who have to cross flooded areas to get to school. However, Mr. Speaker, we have debated in this House that government allocates money to various constituencies. And in those constituencies where we experience floods and where children have to cross rivers, the CDF can be used to purchase banana boats. But in most cases, the councils, of which members of parliament are members, overlook this factor. They rush for motor vehicles even where there is no road and no floods. So it's very important that as we plan for our constituencies, as we plan for our districts, as we plan for our provinces, we should take note of some of these hidden challenges that our people go through. And I believe that the CDF can play a critical role in meeting the needs of our communities in various parts of this country. I thank you, sir.
Honorable Member for Chimwemwe.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank you. Your Honor, the Vice President, while appreciating the ongoing administrative changes at the Ministry of Health and the former Medical Stores Limited, now ZAMSA, the people of Chimwemwe would like to know when government would move to normalize the current severe shortage of essential drugs in the clinics across the constituency, where our patients are just being given prescriptions to go and buy drugs on their own. I would like to thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Her Honor, the Vice President.
Mr. Speaker, government will not stop taking care of its people in as far as their health status is concerned. And government will always allocate resources for the purchase of drugs and the whole drugs value chain. And government is already purchasing these items. The major question that has captured the imagination of the public is the expenditure on COVID medical supplies. But the other issue was that some of the drugs had expired. So government is looking into all this, and government cannot stop supporting the purchase of drugs because of the ongoing cases. government is at work, protecting the lives of its people. I thank you, sir.
Honorable Member for Solwezi Central.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Am I audible, Mr. Speaker?
Yes, you are.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. I honor the Vice President. We are the only provincial headquarter that has not been given the roads that were flagged off in 2015 by His Excellency, the President of the Republic of Zambia. Now, this is our last and final year to be in Parliament, Madam Vice President. Is your government willing to release funds for the 20.5 kilometer roads in Solwezi Central? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I honor the Vice President.
Mr. Speaker, government will release funds when these funds are available, not only to Solwezi, but other provincial headquarters where township roads project has not yet started or is halfway. So Solwezi has not been forgotten, but when resources are made available, the works will continue in that province, particularly in the Solwezi business district. I thank you, sir.
Honorable members, it's now time for question for answer. Under Standing Order 31, the Honorable Member for Namwara.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question 1.
I honor the Vice President.
Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Member of Parliament for Namwala has asked the Vice President a question in 4 parts as follows. A, what are the final figures of the registered voters following the completion of the compilation of the voters' roll, province by province? A. B, why the Electoral Commission of Zambia has not announced the final figures to the public to date. C, when the anomalies that are being noted during the voter verification exercise will be corrected. And D, whether an opportunity will be availed to the affected people to verify those anomalies, that anomalies have been corrected. Mr. Speaker, before I respond to the specific questions raised by the Honorable Member, I wish to inform the nation that the Commission, the Electoral Commission, conducted registration of voters from 9th November 2020 to 20th December 2020. The voter registration exercise was simultaneously conducted in all the 116 districts and 156 constituencies across the country during the stated period. The exercise provided for an eligible citizen to register from any registration center, but indicate the polling station of their choice. This implies that where one registered from is not necessarily where they will vote from. And to ascertain this requires that the Commission consolidates the data according to the respective polling stations one will vote from. The Commission provisionally registered a total of 7,020,000 voters at national level at the end of the exercise. Upon completing the registration of voters, the Commission embarked on the demobilization of equipment and consolidation of all the voter records. This was subjected to a cleanup and the reduplication processes before the compilation of the 2021 Provisional Register of Voters. I thought this background, Mr. Speaker, was necessary. Mr. Speaker, now I give the responses to the specific questions raised by the honorable member as follows. A, the Commission will provide the consolidated number of voters on the Provisional Register of Voters by Thursday, 25th February 2021. This data will also be disaggregated at provincial, district, and constituency levels, in addition to gender disaggregation. The inspection of the Provisional Register of Voters is currently underway using electronic platforms. The electronic-based inspection of the Provisional Register of Voters involve use of the phone USSD shortcode *214# on all three mobile networks, Airtel, MTN, and Zamtel, and the use of the website platform eczvr.org. The Commission will later on, from 29th March to 2nd April 2021, conduct a physical inspection of the Provisional Register of Voters. During this period, voters will be offered services such as the replacement of lost or damaged voters' cards, transfers for those who would like to change their polling stations, and the removal of the deceased voters from the register. The Commission will also receive objections and appeals during this period. In B, the Commission has not yet announced the final figures to the public because it is still finalizing the report of voter details and will provide the consolidated as well as disaggregated data of the 2021 Provisional Register of Voters by Thursday, 25th February 2021. And in C, Mr. Speaker, the electronic verification of voter details commenced on 7th February 2021. The verification uses the code *214#. It can be accessed in any part of the country with GSM network in all the three mobile service providers. It is not only available in urban areas, but also in the rural areas, and the service can be accessed using a simple feature phone in addition to smartphones, as is applicable for mobile money transactions. Voters who identify any anomalies in their voter details will have an opportunity to have their details corrected during the physical inspection of the Provisional Register of Voters, scheduled to be conducted from 29th March 2021 to 2nd April 2021. And in D, the correction of anomalies identified during the inspection of the provisional register will be done during the physical inspection of the provisional register. The affected voters will have to visit an inspection center with a voter registration kit and have their details corrected and a new voter card issued instantly during the physical inspection of the provisional register of voters. The voters will be able to verify their updated details, and they will have the voter card with the corrected particulars in their possession immediately after correction of the identified details using a voter registration kit. Additionally, this will also have access to the electronic platform and be able to use the short code *214# after the second consolidation of the voter data that will be conducted after the physical inspection of the provisional register. Mr. Speaker, I therefore encourage every registered voter to verify their voter details on the provisional register of voters and make use of the electronic inspection of the register to confirm that their voter details are correctly captured. And if not, ensure that their details are corrected during the physical inspection of the 2020 provisional register of voters. Mr. Speaker, I thank you.
Honorable Member Funamwala.
Mr. Speaker, thank you, and I thank the Vice President for that detailed answer. However, Mr. Speaker, it's like the Vice President is giving us a calendar which is not in conformity with the calendar which ECZ issued, which has got 11 items. In answering question B, she said ECZ, they are still finalizing the voter details. And as a result, in answering A, ECZ will issue the voter figures to the public on 25th February. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, according to ECZ calendar on item 2, voter registration consolidation of voter registration data, which started on 30th December 2020 and ended on 31st January 2021. They should have by now announced the figures, because this exercise, which the Vice President said in question B of finalizing voter registration, according to ECZ, they have already done it. Why is it that they haven't announced the figures to the public? I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I honor the Vice President.
Mr. Speaker, the statement I've just given was provided by ECZ itself. And the ECZ could not come out with exact figures while the institution was still going through all the processes, including demobilizing all the machines that were in all the constituencies and districts back to Lusaka. This exercise was also a mammoth one. And the Electoral Commission follows an elections calendar and gives information and details of the steps and processes that ECZ takes at every stage. And stakeholders have been informed about this calendar. And if there are any adjustments, again, stakeholders are informed so that everyone is aware of what ECZ is doing to prepare for the 2021 general elections. I thank you, sir.
Honorable Member for Serenge indicating on the Zoom platform.
Your Honor, the Vice President, I'm speaking from the background of an electoral officer. The issue of final figures of the voter registration has become problematic in political circles. People want raw data to be produced. Your Honor, is it possible to produce accurate data before verification of the voters' registration? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I honor the Vice President.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not very privy to the law that dictates the examination of the primary data that ECZ captured, but I believe this can be done if it's not already planned for. And the final figures of the register of voters to be used during 2021 elections will only be available upon certification of the register of voters by the electoral chief before the general elections as provided for by the law. And the work is ongoing to ensure that ECZ beats the deadlines of the dates specified in when certain processes should be concluded.
The Honorable Member Funamwala indicating again on Zoom platform.
Mr. Speaker, I thank you. Let me move away from the figures and go to item when answering question D. When answering question D, where she talked about the verification and members of the public will be able to have their details corrected. But my question is, going to ECZ calendar, why is it that they gave their primary cause of having elections, which is voter registration, fewer days, from 9th November to 22nd December, and yet they gave, which I would call a secondary cause in their duty, voter verification by virtually or using electronic gadget, more time from 7th February to 7th May. And they gave the physical one, which is more important because people will have to change their details, only 4 days, 29th March to 2nd April. Mr. Speaker, I thank you.
I honor the Vice President.
Mr. Speaker, I have explained that the ECZ is following a specific calendar. And the ECZ has been given by the law 90 days to finalize all these arrangements. Mr. Speaker, the new register has to be cleaned up. There are some voters that have passed on during this COVID period. And it has not been easy for the ECZ to trace the voters. The compilation of data has taken time because Honorable Speaker may know that voters were registering. A voter may register in Kaputa as a voter, but decide to vote in Nalolo. And all this data had to be collected. The number, the desegregation on the basis of gender, how many women registered, how many men registered, how many young people under the age of so and so registered. So this is a lot of work that goes into the compilation of a genuine voter register. And the reason why ECZ seems to have delayed, it has not delayed because it was following the mandate that was given to ECZ by this parliament. And we should try to understand why certain things are done in the manner they are being done. I thank you, sir.
Honorable Member for Kalavo Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is in relation to verification by the voters in the rural area. According to what the Vice President has mentioned, she has stated that physical checking or physical verification will be from 29th March to 2nd May. Mr. Speaker, I want the Vice President to give us the detailed part of how the ECZ will manage to visit these remote centers without causing confusion, without failing to reach the centers like what happened in the actual exercise of issuing voter registration. If she can come out clearly so that we really understand how the people who managed to visit the centers and which centers in that period which she has stated. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I honor the Vice President.
Mr. Speaker, the use of electronic gadgets will be very necessary in the verification exercise. And this government has worked so hard to provide communication towers in most parts of this country. I would say in every constituency of this country. And ECZ has not stopped at that. It has identified certain centers where the registration kits will be placed for those would-be voters to verify their details, where the physical verification is required. And this physical verification will run from the 29th March to 2nd April. And all the 8,999 registration centers will be opened during this time. And the kits will be placed at strategic centers in all the wards so that voters can have access to physically visit the centers and verify their particulars. I thank you, sir.
Honorable Member for Wampa.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. My concern is on the electronic verification using *214# and my most concern is in the rural areas. I just want to find out from from Her Honor the Vice President, because we are speaking from our constituents and we have seen what is happening. How much has the Commission done to sensitize the would-be voters so that this exercise can be effective? Because from the look of things, a lot of stakeholders in our constituencies or a lot of voters are in darkness with this electronic verification. So how much has the Commission invested in terms of sensitizing the communities that this exercise is effective?
I honor the Vice President.
Mr. Speaker, there are many platforms in which ECZ disseminates information regarding the voting processes. And that's why this information has been brought to the House today to inform the members of Parliament. And the members of Parliament are expected to go back to their constituencies and sensitize our people on the processes. Additionally, the members of communities in our constituencies are sending money to each other using the same platforms. And there is no reason why we cannot do the same to verify our records on the voter registration. And the use of the three mobile network providers I have explained, Airtel, MTN, and Zamtel across the country, and the services are provided both in urban and rural areas. Members of Parliament are aware, I've said earlier, that we have communication towers and you can pick information electronically without coming to an urban center. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, the Commission has held several media briefings and will conduct voter education and communication to include all voters so that voters are aware of the services provided, including sensitization in rural communities. So this is ongoing, and we believe that the honorable members of Parliament will augment the work of ECZ to sensitize our communities on the need to understand and verify their details when ECZ comes into the polling stations, to set up these voter kits for physical verification. I thank you, sir.
Honorable Member for Kanchivia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Your Honor, for that very candid response to the question posed by the Honorable Member for Namwala. Your Honor, the Vice President, we have a challenge at our hands, particularly to the people in Kanchivia, of Mwele, Witkila area, Kabinga, indeed our people in the Northwestern Province, our people along the Zambezi in the Western Province, whose houses have collapsed. And it means some of them have lost their voters' cards and their NRCs. Now the challenge is there is need for NRCs to be issued for them also there is need for new voters cards to be issued. And the duration given is not much. Will government, this caring PF government, consider to involve the NRC office department and also the ECZ to go in a bit earlier so that these affected areas are given sufficient time to overcome the challenges aforementioned? I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I honor the Vice President.
Honorable members should also be aware that it's a costly exercise to undertake the registration of voters as well as mobile issuance of NRCs. And the ECZ is working closely with the Ministry of Home Affairs to see how they can face some of the challenges that the voters are already facing. So, Mr. Speaker, I cannot guarantee that another mobile issuance of voters' cards will be undertaken soon before elections. So is the mobile voter registration. Mr. Speaker, will rely on the data that has been collected so far. And we are only waiting for the verification of that data to ascertain the correct records of every registered voter. I thank you, sir.
The Honorable Leader of Opposition, Member of Parliament for Monze Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Honor, the Vice President, you have informed the House and the nation that despite the electronic verification of the details, you still require to visit the actual registration center so that your details can be corrected. Your Honor, taking into account the chaotic registration of voters that took place last year, where a number of people had to sleep over waiting for them to register. What assurance are you giving to the people of Zambia that in the 4 days which has been allocated, and taking into account that the verification centers will not be at every polling station, what assurance are you giving to the people of Zambia that within that short period of 4 days, they will be able to rectify whatever anomalies are on the voters' cards, taking into account further that if there are anomalies and you are not able to correct, you cannot vote? What assurance are you giving?
I honor the Vice President.
Speaker, the assurance I can give is that it will be possible to normalize all the anomalies that will show for every voter. Mr. Speaker, we do the voting in 1 day, but ECZ has given us a number of days from the 29th March to 2nd April to physically verify our details. And Mr. Speaker, I pointed out earlier that all the 8,000, almost 9,000, 8,999 registration centers will be opened during this period to allow for registered voters to check their details. And this is in proximity to their villages or where they live, if it's in town. And these centers, some of the centers will be placed in strategic places. This will be done in 4 days, whereas voting is only in 1 day. So ECZ is able to undertake this exercise within this given period. And Mr. Speaker, allow me to inform the nation that if one verified electronically that their details are correct, that voter does not need to visit the center physically, because the correct records would have appeared. Physical inspection is for 5 days. And these days are adequate to attend to every voter that is not satisfied with their details. Mr. Speaker, I thank you.
Honorable Member for Mwandi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Your Honor, the Vice President, last year, before the beginning of the voter registration exercise, ECZ announced a target of 9 million voters. If I heard you correctly today, you've announced that they've only managed to capture 7,020,000 voters. Doesn't this imply underperformance by the Electoral Commission of Zambia? I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honor the Vice President.
Mr. Speaker, ECZ did its best to capture as many voters as possible. And the figure of 70,200,000 that has been given to us is a true picture of the captured voters. It may be even less because we have lost some voters during this COVID, from rather COVID and other related misfortunes. So, Mr. Speaker, ECZ has been equal to the task. And during that, the verification of the voter register, we will be told how many of the voters had passed on and how many have left the country. And there are so many explanations that ECZ will give to the general public. The 9 million voters, the figure was given by the Zambia Statistical Agency, and the institution gave estimate of eligible voters at that time as 8.4 million. The 7 million captured translated to 83%, which is a reasonable achievement by ECZ. So at the end of the period, we will be informed of the exact figure of Zambians who will vote in the 2021 elections. I thank you, sir.
Honorable Member for Bwengwa.
Thank you, Honorable Mr. Speaker. Madam Vice President, thank you so much for giving us that information. Your Honor, the Vice President, are you able to give us the projected figure on how many people will be captured during the electronic verification of a provision of voters register before the physical inspection? Thank you so much, Honorable Mr. Speaker.
Honor the Vice President.
Mr. Speaker, the statement was very detailed and very clear. and it is not possible at this given time to give estimates of those voters or would-be voters that were captured in the manner that the Honorable is asking for. So, Mr. Speaker, the dates that have been given to us by ECZ are not very far away. So I urge the Honorable Member to wait until we are given the real figures and facts by ECZ. And the Commission, the ECZ, will provide the statistics during the press briefings that it will continue holding between now and the election time. And all this information will come out at intervals as they continue finalizing the voter register. I thank you, sir.
Honorable members, I will take the following interventions as the last. And beyond this, please spare yourself the trouble of indicating. Honorable Member for Manyinga, Kalomo Central,